Lee, it's always excellent when we are joined by Andrii Telizhenko. There's not too many other guests that have more of a first-hand eyewitness experience of the whole United States intervention into Ukraine. How are you today, Lee?
I'm pretty good. I'm out of the hospital, so pretty good.
People were worried, and good to see you back. And
Yeah,
Andrei, how are you?
I was telling you before that we went on
Yeah,
the air. My blood sugar was 284 on Friday, which is high,
yeah.
So my pills have run out, and I have lost some of my health insurance since I'm no Sputnik. But 3 days of taking my pills, 130. So I'm feeling much better.
That's good to hear. I also want to remind people that they can sponsor Lee on patreon.com/Stranahan. We're going to be keeping this conversation here on YouTube and Rumble and Odyssey and all of those channels, but I really do want to encourage people to sponsor Lee. It helps keep this kind of independent journalism going, and I wouldn't know Andrei. We wouldn't have had all these conversations with Andrei if it wasn't for Lee. Andrei, how are you doing?
Hi guys, always happy to be back. It is actually the best pleasure to be with you because you are in depth in what you're talking about, and it's always nice to talk to you because you know what you're talking about and answer all your questions. And God bless for Lee. He was like and you, Jason. We were linked together for more than 7 years, so he's been from the beginning when this whole story broke, and I think nobody would have known who I was if it wasn't for Lee Stranahan. So I think this is real journalism, and people should support Lee Stranahan because this is what is the independent journalism looks like. This Lee's face. That is it because he brought me here, and I'm still here because of him.
So, Andrei,
Absolutely.
thanks so much. But you're a hero, I gotta say. Andrei's a hero.
I
And
agree.
Andrei, have you seen the article by Aaron Mate featuring you?
I
There was an
have.
article. Oh, well, that's interesting. Yeah, because I had sent it earlier, but I know it's very difficult with the time zone and all that. There was an article earlier today in Real Clear Politics discussing what 10 years of U.S. meddling in Ukraine have wrought. And the spoiler alert is it's not democracy. It caught my eye because Aaron Mate features a picture of you. I mean, maybe this is about 10 years old, I guess, with John McCain. Can you see that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of them with me in
Hmm.
that article.
So, yeah,
So yeah,
hopefully you'll get an
that's
opportunity to read this. And I mean, you've spoken with Aaron Mate, right?
yeah. I saw the article came out yesterday, I believe so, and it went viral not only on Real Clear Investigations and politics, but also on Gateway Pundit, Epoch Times, Zero Hedge. All of them reposted the full article, and I know that Aaron Mate was with the judge on YouTube yesterday
Judge
talking about this article in depth.
Yeah.
What
Judge
judge?
Napolitano, yeah.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so, so this article is getting a lot of traction. I did not believe it. Like not because it's just because I'm there. No, it's very well written on in and also on the situation on what happened to Ukraine within the last 10 years of U.S. dictatorship over the Ukraine's so-called sovereign democratic country. And this is all explains the corruption, the coup of Maidan. And it also shows the picture through my eyes, how I went through all this from us being a supporter, and I do not hide it. I see people writing,
You
"Oh,
talked
you were
about
with
it on
Maidan,
your show. Yeah.
you're you're with Zelensky, oh, and you're with Poroshenko." I was at that time with my Don, but then I saw what it led to, and I spoke out. And for 7 years, I've been speaking out. And Lee was the one who picked my story up after Politico, and we've been ever friends with Lee ever since. So my fight is still happening, and I can prove I was there, but it led to destruction of my country, and that's why I'm fighting back to have my country back in peace, or at least what's going to be left of it, to save as much life as possible. And this
No,
article shows a great example of what Ukraine has become from what it was 10 years ago.
and so I want to point out to Jason, I think there's a danger of the incrimination by photo. You see it a lot. They have a photo of someone with someone else. So if you just saw the photo, you think Andrei's a buddy McCain, right? you'd think he's a pal of him.
Right.
It never accounts for people possibly changing.
Yeah.
And I think, Andrei, you're no longer a fan of McCain, right? I mean, he's dead, but
No. Well, yeah, I'm no longer a friend of McCain. First of all, he was not a. From, well, I stopped supporting McCain when I found out that he's been taking Soros money as a Republican, and so I understood where that picture was going from. So I saw the real politics from the inside and how people who they say they were not trying to pose what they're not and promote a war agenda in my country. So I knew McCain. I was responsible for his security on Maidan, and I was the one who coordinated his visit. But and I know a lot of other Democrats, and this article says that I was more pro-democratic, not pro-democratic, but I was within the Democratic Party side more. I was in the White House more than 5 times under Democrats under Obama,
right.
officially, not just as a tourist, but official visits and having meetings with not far from the Oval Office in the Asian Tower
Including
building.
Eric
Also,
Tremello, right?
not only Eric Tremonell, but also Lynn Dubois. He was the advisor on European relations in 2013 for Obama. And I met the Zentas, National Security Council people, Eric Tremonell, the whole crowd. I was there. I knew all the Democrats. I knew all the neocons, and I saw what they did to my country. Then I saw what they did to the United States, and I said, "Look, this has to stop. Somebody has to come up and say it." I saw nobody had the balls to do it, and I thought I would. I thought I would accomplish something. Unfortunately, the war is still there. Uh, Ukraine is falling apart. U.S. is falling apart. But I think that the voice for me coming out, being heard,
Now, why
and
don't I
me
ask
and Lee
you
wrote
a question
this
about
together.
actually a question about that, Andre? Jason, I just want to say, the camera never lies, right? That's
Well,
true. But a
I
camera
don't know about that.
is a slice of time. It's a
Yes.
slice of time, right? So it's true. That's not a fake photo. It's not AI Andre.
No.
That would be good though. But it's not AI Andre. It's a real photo, but it's a real photo at a point. He changed again. So
Yeah.
that's why I watch out for that kind of journalism. But
Well, and the other
Jason,
thing is, this is what Andre has been telling us the whole entire time, that he
exactly
started as
right.
an employee of the Ukraine embassy and he was interacting with Democrats until Alexandra Chalupa tried to co-opt him into a corrupt plan to manufacture false information about Trump.
Right. And
Yeah.
uh,
And take him out of the elections. And not only Chalupa's work against Trump, but also the Ukrainian embassy itself, coordination and work against Carter Page, George Papadopoulos, General Flynn, and Paul Manafort, and all that crowd.
Well,
And
let's say some of that for a second because I want to get into it when I talk about the CIA and NGOs. But Andre, I have a question for you on recent events. So the funding bill requires Ukraine to conscript more people, right? You
yeah,
heard that. So right now, it's obvious Ukraine is really losing, and they're losing a lot of troops. I heard people on Ukrainians are surrendering en masse because they're not happy with Zaluzhny being fired. I've heard that. Have you heard that, Andre?
partially yes, and partially that because they have nothing to fight with at all.
Right.
Everything that over $200 billion, which was given before, together with the United States and the EU, within the last 2 years, that's twice the amount of the Russian Federation's military budget. And Ukraine did not succeed at all. Everybody understands. Look, you're fighting a nuclear nation. First of all, that's just even that one thing is already a mind blower that you have to understand. You're not going to win because it's going to be nuclear war if you're ever going to try to take over the capital of the other country, if the nuclear one. That's one thing. Second of all, you have to have an economy to sustain yourself to fight the war. You have to have an economy to sustain not only the battlefield, but behind the battlefield lines, to have soldiers be well equipped, well prepared, and have psychological support, have economical support, have military support, have everything they need on the front lines every day, every time, every second, every hour. Ukraine had nothing of all that. The government knew that they had nothing. Ukraine was one of the largest countries from the post-Soviet Union times, had the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world after the United States and Russia, and it all gave it away, thank God. But I'm just saying it had everything. But then within the last 30 years, under the sovereign, independent dictatorship of the foreign governments and Ukrainian nationalism, it was all being corruptly given away. So Ukraine has nothing, not even bullets. They don't have even an ammo factory because the ammo factory was in Lugansk. And under Poroshenko, the so-called patriot of everybody, which they call, he didn't even build an ammo factory. It's the simplest thing. He didn't even a missile factory, an ammo factory. So Ukraine has nothing. And those soldiers which are going there to fight, I'm in contact with a lot of them. At first, they were angry with me and they hated me. And then after the so-called counteroffensive, then they were told the lies they're going to go to Crimea back and forth 4 times. They didn't even move a kilometer within the front lines of the Russian Federation army in Zaporizhia, and a kilometer. They didn't even dig in. They were fully destroyed and fully backed out. And they understand now that what we are talking here about peace. They want peace. They don't want to fight. They understand that the enemy, for them, or the Russian army at the other side, is a very strong army, which was told lies that this is not going to be a strong army. We can defeat them and go to Moscow. That's what Zelensky talked about. I don't know what everybody's praising him about. A year before the war, he being the main general of the military of the Ukrainian army, saying that he's going to roll tanks in the Arbat in the center of Moscow.
Right.
And people are asking why this war started.
Good
Go
luck.
back and look at the official statements of the Ukrainian government. They wanted this war. And they provoked this war for years, not only before 2020, but years before. So today, 63% of Ukrainian men don't want to fight. A lot of them are fleeing and paying from $5,000 to $20,000 to leave the country. Cash, corrupt money, just to flee the country, and they don't have a guarantee they're going to flee it. And they're paying that money just to leave to save their lives because they understand if they're going to be enlisted with force, they're going to have to give up, or they're going to die because there's no aircraft support, no nothing. The Ukrainian army had like 35 jets, and I told this all before the war started. 3 years before the war, 2 years before the war, I spoke on the Ukrainian television, the opposition channels which were closed. The aircraft system which Ukraine has, 35 airplanes of the Soviet era, are a third generation planes. Russia has fifth and sixth generation planes, which see aircraft 200 kilometers in front of them. The Ukrainian aircraft sees only 30 kilometers. There's no even chance even of winning a war without any the New World War without any aircraft support. There's no missiles. There's no satellites. Ukraine has everything's being given by the United States and a country which is begging for ammunition and money to sustain itself. Ukraine is like a Frankenstein right now, being on life support. And another country which has not surrendered, but got peace. We had the possibility of peace talks in Istanbul, Minsk, even before that. And another country, the government, which was sovereign, would say, guys, we're not going to win. Let's talk about peace and negotiate what's going to be best for our country. Neutral status for Ukraine. Ukraine has a great situation, a pipeline, which they could have used to be one of the hubs like Serbia has and Turkey for gas transportation to Europe, have other economical support and developments in that area to basically develop that process and make money out of this and be a connection between Russia and the West. No, it chose to be an enemy. But I think that's going to change soon.
And so, Jason, Andrii, back me up if you agree. It's a human cost. This is a generation of Ukrainians are being killed. I mean, literally, like a whole generation, the younger people. In fact, the situation is so bad, they're considering, I get this today. It's a draft notice from Ukraine. They want me, Justin.
Come on.
No, but they really are like conscripting like mentally challenged people. That's why they want
60,
me.
I heard they were going up to 60 years old. I mean, the type of people that you would never expect to be put into an army. It's pretty desperate.
They're giving people with heart conditions to the army. They're giving people without even arms to the army. I myself, when I was a kid before I left Ukraine, I was to leave Ukraine. I had to go through the military office process, and I left Ukraine legally, officially. Thank God. But I was followed, but thank God I had a support for friends who got my life saved in that situation. But I saw people and the military police officers trying to get out of the country, and they had no arms, no right hand or left hand, and they said, you have to wait until the war ends, or we're going to still use you anyway. Don't worry, we won't let you out of the country. So this is what Ukraine is about. The new budget, which is Lee was talking about. And they're getting people, anybody they can, to fight this war. They're getting people epileptics. We had 3 cases of epilepsy. Even before getting to the front lines, people died getting to the training camps of the so-called Ukrainian army, and because they were epileptic and nobody could have saved their lives. So, and the medical commission let them through. And this is because by the order of the West wants all these men because they're financing this war. They want to show that because they're giving so much money to Ukraine, even though most of that money is not getting to Ukraine, half of it is getting staying in the United States
Right.
within the military-industrial complex. The other half
Right around
is
DC in
yeah.
Alexandria.
So basically, this all what is happening today, it could have been stopped and avoided, but no, the West continued to push. One phone call, one phone call from the Obama or from the Biden administration, from the White House to President Putin and say, let's talk. And this will start to go somewhere where it has to go to end this war, because 700,000 Ukrainian soldiers are on the ground today. They're dead. Who's going to get them back? 30% of Ukrainian territory is lost. If we're going to lose Odessa, that's for sure. We're going to lose Kharkiv, that's for sure. And then Kiev. There's going to be no Ukraine next. And of course, America's going to leave and say, oh, we tried. But of course, we made money. We tried and then we left. That's what everything they're doing. In Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Vietnam, in Korea, everywhere they did in the last 70 years, America did not want any war. So what's going to happen
Jason,
today?
If you want another young Ukrainian wife, I think it would have no competition at this point.
Yeah, thanks, but I don't think it's too safe to go there right now. I mean, what Andrii is saying is extremely serious, because even for the people who weren't killed, Andrii, the infrastructure has been devastated. There's no schools, there's no health care, electricity.
Destroyed.
First of all, the electricity is destroyed. Second of all of these men, and I speak to the soldiers on the ground, and they support my ideas of peace. Even though the government calls me pro-Russian and America calls me pro-Russian, I speak to the soldiers who are fighting this war, so-called war, and they say, you're right. We have to be there because we have nowhere else to go, and they're trying to be in the middle and in between. But what they're doing is they say, the men who are coming back, they have PTSD problems. Nobody's tackling those issues. Can you imagine hundreds of thousands of men who are going to return crippled with PTSD problems? They're going to be they have mental problems, and they are already having them. There's rocket launchers being blown up, machine guns going off the streets, grenades are exploding in people's houses. And nobody's challenging that. Nobody's even investing money. Of course, nobody wants to do that. When I was in the government in Ukraine, and advisor to the first deputy prime minister, and then when working with the prosecutor general's office, I had and I told the Donbass war was already happening. I raised the question: why not, if America wants our help in all this situation, why did not invest into the people? Because these people are going to come back home and they're going to be challenged, and we're going to have a total situation, a chaotic situation with men with machine guns on the street who went through a war, and they're not accounted for, and they're not getting any help they needed. Well, you know what I was told by the President Poroshenko? Fuck it. And this is what the answer is. Fuck it. And also by the United States government. Nobody wanted this. They didn't need investment into people's lives, future lives. They needed investment into people's deaths because they needed to topple the Russian government, to use Ukrainians. And that's what's going to happen. They're losing it.
Where is Petro Poroshenko now?
Oh, he's in between. He's waiting for his chance to come back and topple Zelensky with the help of the United States.
Oh, he wants to be president again.
Yeah, he announced that he's going to run for president. He wants to be president.
It's a good gig.
He's fully backed by the United States. So is Zelensky. Zelensky is from his team. Like, they are together, like brothers and all this. And Klitschko is also part of that team. So they're basically all being coordinated together against Zelensky by the U.S. So if something happens, if Zelensky doesn't take an order right and doesn't go the right direction that Washington wants them to go, they're going to overthrow him with Poroshenko. And they're going to say, oh, it's pro-Russian.
I'm feeling a little naughty. You still have Poroshenko's phone number?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And I have Zelensky's phone numbers and your Mac phone number. I can.
Wow. We should call those guys.
What do you say, Jason?
Right now? Yeah.
That'd be fun. There.
But we can't do it because we don't have his phone tied into the thing. That would be interesting to try to arrange that.
Would it be fun, though?
Do you think they would answer?
I think Poroshenko.
After the show, I will send you all those phones.
Wow.
If you want,
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Now, Andrei, you said something very interesting. You said that these soldiers who previously thought that you were a Russian spy or something, they're now contacting you. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that? What's going on there? And I mean, this sounds like a real indicator that the sentiment among Ukrainian people is really turning.
Yeah, not only soldiers. I'm in contact with different former diplomats who also are supporting what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Ukrainian diplomats who worked for the government for 30 years, and they cannot publicly support me, but we are meeting with them quite often, or talking over the phone, and also soldiers on the ground in Ukraine today. So what their attitude is, as I said, they were promised with the counteroffensive that they're going to go to Crimea easily 4 times over the last summer, from in the June-July era, and they didn't even move a kilometer within the Russian military trenches. They were pushed back hard, and they cannot go further, and they have to stay. They lost the guys I'm talking to within the counteroffensive process. They lost over 870 men they know around that area. They personally know, and
Wow.
that's they personally know that those people that they were lost. And you can imagine if that's one or two people I talked to, and how many other men
Right.
are talking about it, how many others are lost. And I said the number is 700, 600,000 is the amount that we're talking about, the losses of the military wise from the Ukrainian side. And also we have to understand the Russian men are dying. So we have men on both sides are being killed in this war. And and because Russians have more support, there's the number is of course quite less, but still
Right.
there's young men who could have done something for their countries, who could have changed something, who could have made babies, who could have produced something good. They're all being put into the ground because of somebody. Somebody wanted this war. Somebody didn't like Putin. Somebody didn't like the government in Moscow, and because the Ukrainian government sold off. And I'm not saying it's just because Washington's fault. The Ukrainian government sold off. If the Ukrainian government didn't sell off, like Belarus and even Georgia today, they're fighting for their sovereignty, we would never have this war. They would say no, and that's it. But no, because of people like Newland, because of people like Poroshenko, and all the elites in Ukraine wanted to come back and be under the U.S. and be agents of the CIA. They watch too many James Bond
Let,
movies, and I'm
let's talk
serious
about the
about that.
CIA for a second. Because the reason I wanted you on today was to talk about NGOs. But before we do you know who Taras Hunzak is? Do you know that name?
No,
Taras Hunzak is an academic. He lives in New Jersey. He's 82 now. By the way, I have his phone number too, but we could prank call him. But I've never talked to him. But he has a book out. He was assistant to Roman Kuczynski. Roman
oh yeah,
Kuczynski is a
I know.
CIA. Jason, bring up the page of Taras Hunzak's book, My Memoir. This is page 93. Now, Jason, can you read the part about Soros?
Sure. This is Ukraine's declaration of statehood, the issue of ethnic minorities. Is this the right one?
Do you see the page up on Soros?
93. It says, to this day, neither Kravchuk's government nor Kuchma's
Scroll down a little bit. You'll see
Okay.
Soros.
issues, Ukraine today, stellar Ukraine. I don't know. I don't see Soros here. This
Okay.
just came through on the phone. What is the guy's name?
Taras
Terrence.
Hunzak. Taras, Taras Hunzak, Hunczak.
We
And
got
his
him
book
here.
you can find on Everand, which should be subscribed for free as part of it. Or on
Harvard.
there's Taras Hunzak, yes. Now, his book-
Ukrainian studies at Harvard. Interesting.
Right. He's been at Dartmouth as well, I think. I think he's at Dartmouth. But he's a very respected Ukrainian, respected by Ukrainians. You know, he was part of the OUN and back in the 50s, part of the
Yeah,
national.
the Nazi movement.
When we say national Ukraine, a lot of people think nationalism right, but nationalist Ukraine means racist nationalist, basically. So it's not yay. You know, so
It's nationalism of a pro-Nazi, neo-Nazi movement towards hatred toward not Jews, not only Jews, because Nazism is not only hatred to Jews, it's hatred to anybody, and putting the Ukrainian race higher than any other race in the world, that they are privileged more. This is what Ukraine is today. We're talking about this, and nobody understands how can Nazism be under Zelensky? He's a Jew. It can be because it's not only against Jews, it's against anybody else, and it's right now it's against the Russians.
so
Which Ukrainians are also.
Hunsack's book is important because in his book, not on that page, I thought it was the page. Sorry, Jason, my mistake.
It's okay.
But he talks about how George Soros was recruited by the CIA. Now let's find out who Roman Kuczynski is. Look up Remembering Roman Ukraine. You should search for that. Should find it. It's an article on.
The Atlantic Council has it posted.
Right. Yes. Exactly right. So if you scroll down, you'll see Roman Kuczynski was a Ukrainian. There he is. He's passed away. That's why I'm remembering him. But he's from Ukraine, and he was a CIA agent. You'll see that. He was a CIA operator.
Yeah, it says it right here. Ukraine-focused propaganda effort that was funded by the CIA.
Right. Yeah. That's who he is. And in his book, Hunsack talks about Roman Kuczynski calling George Soros for a meeting. So again, a CIA agent called Soros for a meeting. And the meeting was to get Soros to set up NGOs in Ukraine. By the way, you've heard of Soros's, what's the Soros group?
Open societies?
Yeah, open societies.
Renaissance, yeah.
So this is before open societies. By the way, they did this first. So in other words, the CIA recruited George Soros, according to Hunsack. That's not me saying it, it's Hunsack.
Yeah.
Okay?
You got this tweet here, Lee, where you're talking about it. The book, My Memoirs by Terence Hunsack, revealed that CIA officer Roman Kapczynski recruited billionaire George Soros to open foundations in Eastern Europe, including Ukraine.
Now, I'll mention one thing about Roman Kuczynski. Now, this is some conjecture, but you tell me. He was born in Vienna. You find that out, okay? And there's a Nazi newspaper that a guy named Michael Chomiak, that's Freeland's great-grandfather, not great, but grandfather.
Yeah.
He was a Nazi Ukrainian paper. And one of the editors was named Roman Kuczynski. And that paper moved to Vienna during the war. So at the same time, Roman Kuczynski moved to Vienna. A child was born in Vienna named Roman Kuczynski. So my conjecture is he's related. I don't know for sure. I haven't found the birth certificate or anything, but I think it's likely. But either way, that's important because a lot of times the CIA uses legacies. Like we talked about Chalupa.
Yes.
Chalupa's grandfather, Kais, her mother's father, forgive me, Keis, was a CIA contact right after the war. So Chalupa also has generational legacy connections to the CIA. But
talk about that for a minute, Lee. Why is it that the CIA wants to do that, to keep it in the family like that?
Trust, I think. I think, who you're more loyal to, Jason, me or your dad?
Right.
I mean, we're friends, right? But
yes, of course. And also, isn't it true that my parents and everybody else's parents, I don't know if indoctrinate is the right word, but in the case of the CIA, the son or daughter would be indoctrinated into that point of view.
Well, also in that article about Roman, you'll find out he was talking to Mykola Lebed. Now, Lebed is the Ukrainian who was running Prolog. He was a war criminal. He really was. Lebed was you can find a lot more about Lebed by looking up the article To Catch a Nazi in the Village Voice. But he was talking to Lebed. They say that in the article. So why would Lebed, be talking to Roman? I think he was saying basically, look, I knew your dad. Let me tell you about them. That's conjecture, but you'll see that they have. This article is great, by the way. If anyone who's not read this, read this. It's 1986, and clearly not Russian propaganda. So
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, a lot of people say, when I say this, I say, I have proof that Soros was recruited by the CIA, and people go, "Oh yeah, I knew that," but they don't know it. They suspect it, but I'm saying this is proof. I mean, it's evidence.
It's
Does that make
very
sense?
strong, compelling evidence. I agree.
Yeah, and uh, again, so don't jump to the conclusion that you know, because finding the actual evidence of this leads to a lot of other things. Okay, so now think about this, Jason. If that's true, that the CIA recruited Soros in Ukraine, what are the possibilities that the CIA recruited Soros in the US? In
I'd
other words,
say definitely.
right, that's conjecture, but you know, obviously he was working with the CIA. And at the time, in the book, Hunzak points out that Soros then set up American the Renaissance. What's it called, Andre?
Uh,
Renaissance, yeah, the Renaissance Foundation in Kiev, yeah.
Yeah. So Renaissance was not just an NGO; it was an incubator of NGOs. So
In the beginning of the 90s, yeah.
yeah. So talk about when you were in Ukraine. How influential was Soros's Renaissance Foundation?
First, like 10 years before 2014, before the coup, they
Yes.
were influential. They were everywhere, especially because what happened is because after the Maidan coup of 2004, because in Ukraine there were two revolutions, remember. First one was peaceful. It didn't lead to what the West wanted. Didn't have any blood spilled, and everybody was happy, and Ukraine was still working with Russia and didn't want to have war. And then that's why they needed a second revolution, basically overthrow of the legit president Yanukovych to state their government and put in people like from the NGOs. So before, like after 2004, they were more influential, but they were not as powerful. They were there. Everybody knew that there was this pro-Western groups, people who understood, who wanted to travel to Europe and America, needed to be connected with them, or needed to have connections with the Western embassies. They would go through all these NGOs. But after 2004, those NGOs, Renaissance NGOs, people like Lishenko, Mustafa Nayem, all these names, Lishenko was part of the Black Ledger Manafort stuff. And they were embezzled into the government by the US embassy, by the US government, told the Ukrainian government officials, the president of Ukraine, to hire all these people, and they were put on high ranking job positions without any government experience, without any experience working for a government or any management job. They were only part of NGO groups getting money on grants, making booklets about democracy, and that's it. But
Well,
these people
also, I
now are
want to
running
talk
the
about
country.
this aspect. In your experience, Andre, again, we talked about how poor Ukraine is. Jobs for the NGO, how did they pay? People say they paid well.
Oh yeah, I want to, from my experience, I got offered when I was working on the other side, and before I came out, and they knew that I'm gonna try to come out because I wasn't happy. I was telling them like we have to do something different in Ukraine, and they would say, "Oh, let's get your grant program for your wife, for you. Start for $20,000, right?
Whoa.
For 2 months of work." I said, and that's the cheapest one from what I understood, because then
Holy
if you go
cow.
higher up, you can get up to $200,000 a year for just doing nothing, just being loyal, and you get fully whatever you want, and then you have connections with the oligarch or the U.S. embassy, and you make money on the side separately from that. So starting from $20,000 for like a month or 2 months work, and then we're like over $400,000 a year, depends on what you do and how you do it, and just do it for nothing. You just basically do round tables, so-called talk about democracy, traveling around Ukraine, which is also separately being paid, compensate for everything, your airfare, all the rental for the premises, the paperwork, everything's compensated. So basically, you get paid a pretty well chunk of money, and sometimes even in cash. And you basically work for these people, and they support you and work you through the government lines. And some of these I worked with organizations like IRI pretty closely in Ukraine, and they were basically paying me in cash sometimes for help for arranging meetings for them in the Ukrainian government, and helping them travel around Ukraine, working on elections, and that's how it's done. So these people are getting pretty well paid when the average Ukrainian salary is like $300, and now it's less than $200 a month, and the prices actually are pretty American out there, or European, like a liter of gas, and that's not a gallon, that's a liter of gas is like
Right.
a dollar 70, and that's in Ukraine where you have a salary of $200 a month, or to pay
Right.
for to rent an apartment out. It's like $1,000 a month, like a three-bedroom apartment in Kiev, and that's $1,000, and plus you pay for gas. And gas is like $200, and to pay for that apartment. So basically, you cannot a person having a salary of $200 cannot even rent a decent apartment for himself, not even just
Wow.
pay for gas or anything else. So you're gonna understand working with NGOs or selling your soul off to Western governments and being loyal to them. It's a pretty darn good thing for to put it like I'm being sarcastic now, and to do that because basically you choose from surviving to
Right.
basically knowing nothing and working in the government and working for these people and making money for your family and thinking you're doing democracy work, and you actually do believe that you're doing democracy work, but at the same time you're selling off your country, which these people did right now. And now
So
there are all these people like Mustafa Nayyem is running the energy sector in Ukraine, which he failed totally. We see because the energy sector in Ukraine is totally destroyed.
so what I'm pointing out is that Soros is essentially a cutout for the CIA. Does it make sense, Jason? It's
And
a
just
cutout.
funneling money to people, Lee. We even see right here on the website, they're telling you the different grants that they're offering,
Right.
and they're putting out proposals looking for, I don't even know what, but they're saying strengthening Ukrainian voices for international support in Ukraine. That could be a grant for going on Twitter and just putting out propaganda.
So
Resilience,
one
recovery,
thing we know about the CIA, what do they do? Okay, so one thing they do is
overthrow governments.
manipulate media,
Yeah.
Mockingbird, and that stuff. So in Ukraine, they were clearly manipulating media. In fact, what they do, Andrei, talk about Hormuzka TV. Not, I'm pronouncing it right?
Yeah, 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 Hromadske. So first of all, and also
So
NGOs.
spell it for Jason, because I can't spell it.
Yeah, Hromadske to TV. I'm gonna send it to you right now. Basically, uh, not only they are infiltrating the journalism sector and the TV sector, but I'm also what they're doing in Ukraine. They're looking for all these people around who are most loyal within all those groups, and then pushing them into government positions. And so a lot of Ukrainians, before in Ukrainian politics 10 years ago, before the Maidan coup, you knew who your politicians were. You knew who your members of parliament were, at least. Yeah, they were old school, maybe Soviet grunchy guys, but you knew who they were. People knew everybody's name. Oh, this is that guy. This is that guy. Like in U.S. politics. Right now in Ukraine, I don't even know how all these members of parliament are. Who are these young guys and people? They out of nowhere, somebody's girlfriend, somebody's wife, somebody's boyfriend, whatever, and they are out there.
I
And
found it here. I found it here. It's talking about how the National Television and Radio Broadcasting Council on April 30th called on Ukrainian governmental organizations and officials to stop using Telegram. It's interesting. They have this National Television and Radio Broadcasting Council. It seems remarkably similar in concept to the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, which I allege is run by a legacy CIA puke, Adam Sharp.
And in Ukraine, this organization is being run by Olga Gerasinyuk. She was a member of parliament years and years before, and then she started to join all these organizations, NGOs, and the Soros groups, and travel to Canada and the United States, live there for months and months, being educated. Yeah, that's her, being educated. And I actually knew her before pretty well. We were friends more than 10 years ago, and now she's running this whole thing on Ukrainian media. And these so-called people, yeah, she's a journalist originally. She knows at least what she is talking about. That's what she can manipulate people pretty well compared to other Soros babies from the NGOs, but they basically what they do is they try to block anything that is not legit for them or not they're not happy with, like any other liberal uh, agenda right now in America, like left wing agenda. So basically, these people are all being trained and brought up in America in the state in Canada for months and months and months,
Right.
and then they come back to Ukraine and be embezzled in all these positions, and then they basically write a narrative of what the U.S. Embassy is telling them what to do. It's done all through the U.S. Embassy on official level. On official level, there's experts from former IOI officials or NDI officials who live in Ukraine for more than 20 years. They're all embodied and they know each other, and uh, they're official informants for the U.S. Embassy on the ground, and they run these people also separately, parallel to what they're getting official responses from the embassy. So basically, it's done on official and unofficial level, so it can be protected and say, "Oh, the U.S. government is not involved in this directly." We are listening to the U.S. embassy, but there are also people like on an official level, former NDI and IOI heads of organizations in Ukraine who coordinate all these people and help them being pushed. And their salaries, they have official salaries, which is
Yeah.
like $1,000, for example, which is okay compared to every other salary in Ukraine. But also they're paid like $5,000, $8,000, $10,000 separately from a fund, which is
Wow.
being organized by pro-Soros groups, people like Yareska, who's the former minister of finance in Ukraine, and she killed the Puerto Rican economy. And I know this because I was offered a job like this to those kind of people to be deputy minister of health in Ukraine, and my official salary would be like $1,000, and then I would get a $5,000 to $8,000 a month separately from the Soros organized group. I denied that offer because I was told to have to destroy basically the healthcare system in Ukraine. When
Wow.
Suprun, the American Nazi woman, she actually threatened to kill me when the war started, ran the health ministry in Ukraine years and years before, and this is all
Who
being
was that?
not Suprun, Uliana Suprun, who actually her husband just got sent to prison because he beat up a journalist from Grey Zone.
Well,
Wow.
Jason, we've talked about this before. Do you know what profession pays very badly? Journalism.
Yeah.
Okay, even in this country, like again, when I was at Breitbart, I was making
Not in Ukraine. Not in Ukraine.
right. No, not in the U.S. either. My
In
problem is
Ukraine, it's $10,000 minimum you get it if you're running a marathon show in Hromadske. Minimum $10,000 salary if you're running the show. If you're a good showman, $20,000 to $30,000. So that's where you compared to other Ukrainian salaries, $200.
and so,
So
Jason, if you think about this, a journalist, you hire them, is someone who can write, put together a sentence, write, put
Yeah.
together, so they're already trained, not someone off the street who got trained to write. It's someone who knows how to write, and you're offering them money, and they're probably, again, when I was at Breitbart, I was making less in a year than Bannon made in 1 month. I'm
Wow.
just saying, in general, journalism sucks.
yeah, that's her.
It's
Now,
typical.
who
So,
did this person beat up? Somebody from the gray zone? Who was that? Aaron
Yeah,
Martin?
that's her. Yeah, that's her husband. He's an official fact checker on Facebook, and
Wow.
he beat up a Grey Zone journalist in I think in Washington D.C. or in New York.
How does he
I
not
had it
get
written up
arrested
somewhere.
for that?
And he got arrested actually for that. So
Oh,
basically,
good.
an officially a fact checker and the person connected to the neo-Nazi group, and he's actually a drug addict himself.
Whoa.
And I have it. I'm going to send you a link to it. You can see this is what the Soros group produces in Ukraine and the Nazi group, the hatred, and these people are running the country today. And I just sent you the link to that article
so
right
Andre,
now.
let me run something by you. Another theory I have. I think Hunter Biden, why did the CIA people say that was Russian propaganda? My conjecture is Hunter Biden is some connection to the CIA. My connection is he's like opera of some kind. So they thought protecting Biden, Hunter Biden, was protecting the CIA. See, makes sense. Do you think that's possible, Andre, that Biden's got some connection to the CIA?
I think looking how much pressure there is to protect him from the
Yeah,
other side, there might just be that you just might be right. I have no evidence of that, clear direct evidence. Like I usually like to talk about things I know personally or witness personally or I
but
know that's credible. But here it is
but
logical because so much pressure from the other side that he is connected or was coordinated by the Central Intelligence Agency and they are now protecting him.
so here we know for sure. Hofer Black was on the board of Burisma. Did you know
Yeah,
Hofer Black?
He's
yeah,
CIA.
former deputy CIA, deputy director.
Hofer Black is clearly CIA. I mean,
No, yeah,
he no,
he was officially the deputy director or something.
yeah, right. So him being on the board, that's one. You know, I think again, it's conjecture, but it's not wild conjecture that Hunter Biden may have a connection to the CIA. It also explains why he's not being prosecuted. I think makes sense.
Well, I think it's also very clear that Joe Biden himself is very connected to intelligence. When he first came into the Senate, he was not a part of the Church Committee, but he's very close to Frank Church.
But more importantly, I think Joe Biden, when he came into the Senate, was immediately dealing with Ukraine issues, dealing with people like Vivitsky. Do you know Vivitsky, Andre?
Yeah, I've heard of it, but I don't know all the details about it. I know that Joe Biden was working on the Soviet Union pretty quite
So
often. When he was meeting with
in the
Gromyko
80s,
and all that.
he dealt with this guy, Vivitsky. Now, Vivitsky, when they threw out Shokin, they were thinking of replacing him with Vivitsky. There's emails about that. So he's a guy Biden's known for decades. Again and again, what was happening in the 80s? Articles like that one in the Village Voice were coming out, and people were saying that the CIA had protected Ukrainian war criminals, and that John Yamyuk was a guard at Auschwitz. I think Auschwitz was a concentration camp guard. That story hit 60 Minutes, and a lot of pressure was being put on GOP to distance themselves from Ukrainian Nazis. So the Democrats saw an opportunity, and Biden in particular saw an opportunity, and so he moved right in. So Biden's people say, well, why is Biden so focused on Ukraine? It's not new. It goes back to the 80s. And you can look all of that up. It's all on record.
Yeah, the Ukrainians have been, and there's officially archives documents of this in Ukraine also, that the Ukrainian neo-Nazi groups with Bandera were being financed from the outside by the Central Intelligence Agency, and when they fled Ukraine, because most of them got killed by the Soviet army and the security service of the Soviet Union in the forests of the Western Ukraine, and then in 1953 to 1954, a lot of them fled and even during the World War II. And they were fleeing to the U.S. and the Central Intelligence Agency was using their tactics on how to fight the Soviet Union from within. And there's official records of all of that. And these people went to work directly from a neo-Nazi group coordinated by the SS to the Central Intelligence Agency, which we see today. That's why all these diaspora and so-called chalupas and all these supreme crowds are so well protected by, and they're all very so-called nationalistic, neo-Nazis nationalistic.
I
They
saw
hate anything connected to Russia, Ukraine, like old Ukraine Soviet times. They just hate it. They think Ukraine is a privileged nation that should run the world and everybody owes it.
and I sometimes have trouble with his name, but Yaroslav Stetsko, I told you, Stetsko, Stetsko. Look up
Let's go.
Stetsko. That guy, Jason.
We got him.
Stetsko is very important. Stetsko, you can find pictures of him with Bush, Reagan and Bush.
Oh, wow. It
And
says that he was a Ukrainian politician, writer, and ideologist, and Nazi collaborator who
Right.
served as the leader of Stepan Bandera's faction of the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists. Wow.
And he died in his country. He's protected by the CIA. And so Stetsko was involved in World War II in Lviv. There was a huge slaughter of like 100,000 Jews, and Cisco
And
was
Poles, Jews and Poles and
yeah right.
Romanians, and yeah, there's genocide of not only Lviv but also in Volyn in Western Ukraine, upper Western, northern Western Ukraine, where they would kill also 50,000 Poles, and that was just they were doing genocide all over Western Ukraine. And this is facts, and there's pictures of this and documents of this. That's I fully Lee knows what he's talking about. This is like on topic, and these people are connected with the United States government, the deep state. This is
I
what
said,
Ukraine did. They
have you
made
seen the
Ukraine this.
statue of that guy over in Ukraine? Again, I don't know why. I can say Stranahan, Stetsko. No, I can't. I'm trouble with that.
No, you got it.
You seen the statue of him in Ukraine?
Stetsko, no, I don't. I saw Bandera statue, a lot of them in Ukraine,
Really?
and my old school, which finished one of the elite schools in Kiev, let's see of international relations. There's now a Bandera portrait in almost every classroom, and I raised the question online. In this school, we had a very privileged historical museum in our school, built by our school, talking about the World War II, the Soviet army and the Soviet veterans. And every year when I was going to school there, we went to those veterans who were still alive and living in Kiev. And basically for a week, we helped them. And we were like basically volunteers to help them go to grocery stores, talk about live and everything else. And now I see my school having Bandera portraits in our school because it was ordered by the government of Ukraine. There's
Right.
official Bandera statues all over Ukraine, and every other statue of World War II victory, not about any general or Stalin or Lenin, but soldiers of the Red Army who liberated Ukraine from the fascist, neo-Nazi, and Nazi regimes who took over Ukraine. They're all being now torn down, destroyed by the government, and the government is happy about it. And this is you call Ukraine is not Nazi. It is Nazi because they're going anything which is Soviet and anything that won the Nazi fascist regime. And my great grandfather, for him, and we were on the verge of May 9th, we can talk about this, the Victory Day, told me all these stories. Both of my great grandfathers fought in World War II. One of them went to Prague, got even to Prague, and then uh, got wounded and went to the hospital. The other one, from my father's side, also fought and went to almost to Poland and got wounded. But they went all through all their fighting. I was told all these stories, and they were proud fighting for the Soviet during the Soviet time because that was their country at that time. There was no Ukraine. There was the Soviet government. There was the Soviet nation. There was the Soviet regime. And there was no Ukraine at that time. Everybody now is saying, "Oh, they fought for Ukraine. The Banderas fought for Ukraine." Yes, they did. Maybe for their views, but they did fight for Ukraine. They were used the blue and yellow flag as the Austrian flag, brought onto them from the Austrian times. So it's not even Ukrainian flag or used by Ukraine. It was brought in by the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and these guys used it because the Western Ukraine was under the Austro-Hungarian Empire for a long, long time. They were not part of the so-called Slavic nation world. So this ideology of the neo-Nazi was brought onto Ukraine, saying these people are more pro-Western than you are. They're more culturally better than you are from Central and Eastern Ukraine because you are pro-Russian, pro-Soviet, or whatever, and you should listen to what they have to say about your history, which is sort of bullshit.
So I think one of the things what I heard them say, the Russians are like mutts, not pure Slavs, because they have the Asian influence. Have you heard that, Andrii?
Oh yeah, that's what that's what they're talking about. That the Tatar-Mongol Empire, they went through Russia a lot, so Russia's all been mixed with the Tatar-Mongols, so they're not pure Slavic nation, and they're also using that part to talk about anybody who's saying that Russia is part of the Slavic world. That's also Ukraine was also captured by the Mongol Tatarian Empire, so we are also not pure Slavs, if we could say, but that ideology, that's also total BS because Ukraine and Russia's relationship it was always much more closer than Ukraine's and Western relationship. Yeah, Ukraine was in the middle, or the Ukraine territory was in the middle of all between that wars, but there was no officially Ukraine. The name Ukraine as a government and a
Organized.
or government body paper. It's only mentioned in the beginning of the 20th century, and that's it. And then in the late 20th century, when it got its independence, before that, it was the Kiev Rus, it was the Hetman, not even empire, but it was the Hetmanshina when it was the run by Cossacks, and then it was in between Poland and Russia, and then in 1654 they went, and Bogdan Khmelnytsky, the ruler of the Cossacks in central Ukraine, asked the Russian Tsar to join their army and be with Russia. And since then, Ukraine, before it was with Russia, during the Kiev Rus, we formed together. Novgorod, Kiev was one big nation and one big family. Then it all fell apart because the brothers started fighting each other. Then it went up for a couple of hundred years. It was separate from Russia, in between going between Poland, Lithuania, Russia, the Turks, and then came back to working with Russia because we are one nation. That's why our patriarch is in Moscow, because historically our church is one church from the Kiev Rus from Kiev. It moved to Moscow because so it won't get destroyed. And our patriot is there, our church is there, our history is there. We want our one nation, which are being told to fight by these Banderalites. And it all came this so-called going against Russia and the Russian Empire went even before, more than 100 years ago, when there was still the Russian Empire. They tried to destroy it. The Austrian-Hungarian Empire, the Poles tried to destroy it. They put this idea of the so-called Ukrainization of Western Ukraine. So, and they would try to push all these elites in Ukraine to write in Ukrainian, even though they all spoke Russian. And they promoted the Ukrainian to be more popular than it is. But then the Soviet times, the government of the Soviet Union tried to push that idea to calm people down in the villages and have them united with the Soviet Union. But everybody still spoke Russian. Everybody was still one nation with Russia. And now it all fell apart because of not sovereign, but from outside interventions in Ukrainian history, from Hillary Clinton, from the deep state in Washington. And I'm daring them to just go away from Ukraine because they destroyed what was a great nation before. And now we have to, I don't know how it's going to get back all together. And I do hope that we will have peace.
Andrei,
So,
did you, real
Jason,
quickly, I presume you had the chance to see this interview with Putin and Tucker. Did you feel that Putin's recounting of the history in Ukraine was accurate according to what you know, or not accurate?
Yes, it was. Because yes, it was. And I also like to read about history, not from modern textbooks and what modern times are being read. I like to read about history from the possible archives or textbooks from 100 years old, so you can see the full history of what Ukraine is. And to prove my words, so not to say that Putin is wrong or I'm wrong, Igor Sikorsky,
Helicopter.
you can look him up. Yeah, the helicopter, which is the U.S. presidents use to fly on everyday basis.
He invented the modern helicopter.
Yes, and he invented the helicopter. His company invented the helicopter what the U.S. president uses today, and basically he is from Kiev, and his letters to his friend in 1936 when he was already in the United States, he said, "Yeah, I'm Ukrainian, but we are a group of the Russians. We are all Russians." He called himself Russian, and this is what we're talking about. Real history, people themselves, and he was in America. He could have said whatever he wanted. He was leading Russian groups in America, Russian diaspora groups in America, and he was leading the Russian papers in America, writing for them while he was in New York and living before basically opening up his company. He called himself Russian, and this is what a lot of and he was Orthodox Christian, because that's what it is. Ukrainians are part of the Russian group. And we are the nationals are Ukrainians, but we are all called Ruski. And it's not Ruski like Russians, it's Ruski like Ruskis, like others. So we are all under that group. Belarusians, Ukrainians. And this is true, but he even said that. And this is people who Ukrainians are proud of him. There's a airport named after him in Kiev. There's a university named after him in Kiev, and he's very well known in the world. And he called himself Russian. He's from Kiev. So this is what we're talking about. Like, you should look into facts, history facts, what people called themselves 100 years ago, how the textbooks were written 100 years ago without any so-called political propaganda of neo-Nazism and Bandera-like in Ukraine, that's what I like to read, and that's what I know how history was formed. So what Putin did say to Tucker Carlson was legit from what I know and how I know my history of Ukraine. Even though I grew up in the West and very well connected to the diaspora, I knew who UNUPA was in the 90s before it was very popular in Ukraine. But I know my history of my country.
So
Wow.
this is like a master class in Ukraine. I know Andrei and I are spinning a lot of facts, but I would advise anyone watching this, go back over it, look up those articles, and see what you think. I mean, this is all documented. We mention names and look at them up in the articles, look that up, and you'll learn a lot. Imagine Andrei and I after a couple of shots of vodka, Jason.
Exactly. You know, Lee, today, Lockheed Martin has purchased the Sikorsky Aircraft Company. In typical fashion, if you invent something that they want, they either force you to give it to them or take it or whatever.
So, yeah.
Unfortunately, that's the case.
Again, thank you, Andrei. It's fantastic stuff. You really know, obviously, you lived it. You know, I know academically, but you lived it.
I try to explain to people to explain it as simple as possible because you have to look at Ukraine. First of all, my first question is when officially the name Ukraine was put on a document? When officially, not just a word, because Ukraine means Ukraina in Russian or Slavic language. It's like the borderline. When was it first mentioned? Look that up. You won't find it until before the beginning of the 20th century. That's one thing. Second of all, look about Western Ukraine, how it was formed and what it was being formed through with Austrian-Hungarian Empire, Polish government, and against the Russian Empire. It was 100 years ago they were going against the Russians, and even continue that today, the same agenda, and connect those dots together, and then see what Ukraine is today, and see what the history of 1,000 years ago Ukraine is, and connect those dots, and you understand Ukraine is a powerful sovereign nation, but it's also a Russian nation together. And that's why we're so strong on fighting for ourselves, because that's who we are. And that's we have to be proud of it. But the US and the deep state tried to cut that out and basically destroy that history, destroy the victory that we had during the. For us, basically, it's illegal to say that Ukraine is part of the Russian or Ukraine territory is part of the Russian Empire, which it was for hundreds and more than 300 years. And it's illegal to say that Ukraine is part of the Soviet Union and won World War II. It's illegal to say that in Ukraine. You're going to be put to jail for that. That's crazy. Why would they do that? Because they don't want Ukraine to get back their history. Yeah, there were bad times in history. There were good times, but we have to remember everything. We have to know which we are part of. U.S. came out of Britain. Everybody knows that. Nobody's hiding that. Why do they have to hide that Ukraine was part with Russia for a long, long time ago, and Ukraine is connected to Russia more than anything else in the world? Because they don't want that to happen. They want us to fight.
One thing I should point out also, by the way, because Andrei's under sanctions now. Andrei, is it fair to say that, and I never try to influence your opinion about Russia or Ukraine in any way, but you know what we're talking, did I ever try to influence you?
No, nobody can influence me, I can say.
Right. I have such respect for Andrei that I wouldn't argue with him. I saw Andrei's views change. And also, it's subtle, but notice he's saying Kiev now. Andrei, what's the difference between Kiev and Kiev?
Kiev is the original. That's how originally it's Kiev. Kiev. Originally, it wasn't the Kiev Rus. It was just Rus, and the capital was Kiev, and that's what the Slavic version of it is being spelled. Kiev is the Ukrainian version, but the new modern so-called version. But it had Kiev. That's the original that is, and they try to change everything. And now trying to modernize the so-called Ukrainian language, which is very song-like and very, very melodic and everything else. They're trying to put American or English words into it and make it as far apart from Russian than it is. And basically, it's driving a lot of people crazy. And I cannot even read my daughter books in Ukrainian anymore because it's so ungrammatical. It's poor written. There's no real Ukrainian language out there. So this is what they destroyed our country. We destroyed our country. The Ukrainian government destroyed our country, but also it was helpful with the help of all these people from the outside who thought they could make Ukraine hate Russia and win Russia and destroy Russia using Ukrainian hands. And why are these diaspora people not fighting in Ukraine? That's my question. Why are all these so-called diaspora who are sitting in Washington, America, New Jersey, California, why their children are going to fight in the trenches? They're only telling Ukrainians to fight, 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 because they're afraid they're going to get their ass kicked and they're going to die. And they don't want that to happen because they want to cherish their lives and dollars to continue to work for the CIA or help the so-called Bandera movements in Washington. But Ukrainians are fighting right now. And I think the voices now to have to be set to the people who are fighting on the front line. They want peace. They want this all to end.
Wow. That's a lot. Amazing stuff, Andrii. Really can't thank you enough for joining us. I know it's getting late where you are. I want to make sure people who are watching know that they can follow you on X, Twitter, X. You know what I'm talking about. What's that, Lee?
Yeah, I'm on.
And should follow him.
People should follow Andrii. He's at Telizhenko Andy. We've got it on the screen right there. People can also follow Lee on Twitter if you're not yet doing that. And you can sponsor Lee on patreon.com/Stranahan. You can also support.
Let me just mention one thing here, Jason. I'm putting out material I'm researching my book on Andrew Breitbart, and I'm going over Pickford stuff. I'm reposting some old articles of mine that have not been available for years. So I'm doing a lot of Pickford stuff, and that's going to be going on the Patreon. And we've talked about Pickford before, but Jason, I just found out there were convictions last year.
Wow. Of people wrongfully getting the money, you mean?
Yes. And what's interesting is 7 people have been convicted, but those 7 people were responsible for 192 people in false claims.
Wow.
Why didn't they bust the 192? My theory is, okay, I'll tell you why. The people who are getting arrested for this are Black people and often old and poor. That's why, again, like in this story in Arkansas, people were convicted. These 4 sisters in their 70s were convicted and sent to prison. So imagine the problem of arresting, charging, and bringing to trial 192 people. Makes sense? I mean, practically, really what they have to do is tens of thousands of people. Really, I mean, tens of thousands of people have committed this fraud. So I think they've got a real practical problem. It doesn't exactly look good.
But also, how can you do it? That's a tremendous effort of so many people to prosecute.
Well, it's yes and no, because I don't think it's difficult to prove, actually. But
yeah, but it's a lot of cases and a lot of resources and lawyers and
I want, and look, these women they busted, Linda, Charles, and our sister and other people were getting people to make fraudulent claims, and they take part of the money. They were responsible for $11 million. These women were responsible for $11 million. You can find it all on my timeline. But this is major. So Pickford stuff is still going on, Jason. And I'm going to be bringing more and more on Patreon. So please subscribe.
Wow. Yeah, definitely. People should sponsor Lee on patreon.com/Stranahan and follow him on X at Stranahan. People can follow me on X. I'm suspended this week, but we'll be back soon at JG_CSTT. People can sponsor Crowdsource the Truth. And I do need your sponsorship to keep the show going. Odyssey.com/@Crowdsource the Truth is the most.
On our Saturday show, maybe we should talk about Pickford. What do you say?
That's a great idea. I would like to do that and revisit that story. People can see all those sponsor exclusive shows. Join us on Odyssey.com/@Crowdsource the Truth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/Crowdsource the Truth. I want to thank everybody who sponsors me and Lee and all the other co-hosts. We'd love to be able to offer a sponsorship to Andrii, but he's under the oppressive, wrongful financial sanctions of the U.S. government. So we got to thank him for joining us today and sharing that knowledge. Andrii, we'll have you back soon. Be well.
Justice for Andrii.
Yeah, absolutely.
Always,
Justice.
always a great pleasure, guys. And thank you for having me on. It's always good to speak out the truth and talk to people who know what you're talking about. And the crowd that's listening to us, I've been reading comments from people. They also know what we're talking about. So this is great. You know, people do our spread this information. Do talk to your congressmen and senators on the ground that this is happening. That what's happening in Ukraine. Ask for peace. Don't ask for war and supporting this money. Ask for them to call for peace. And this is going to maybe change lives in somewhere abroad. And people in America can do this right. And that's what I'm asking for. Don't I cannot get money, I cannot get support Lee and support Jason, but also call your congressman and senator and ask for peace in Ukraine for them to do that.
And people
And
who
tell
are
your
interested
friends,
in this should definitely follow Andrii on Twitter.
if I can get 20 new subscribers on Patreon, that would be great. So tell your friends, because no one else is bringing you this level of detail about Ukraine. No one.
Absolutely correct. And Lee, thank you again for all the work that you've done in identifying Andrii and bringing his story forward. And thanks everybody for supporting the show. See everybody tomorrow.